Joey in New York, New York.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hi, Joey. How are you? We're doing good.
I'm good. I'm good. It's really great to talk with you, Tracie, and Phil. It's nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you.
Piacere.
So I've been on the discussion board a little bit there, having a little bit of a debate with fellow atheists.
Okay.
I happen to be an atheist. However, I have been doing a lot of research into the intelligent design movement, and I do hold a strong contention against my other atheists about whether the theory is scientific or not.
Okay.
I happen to think it is. Most think it's not. And my question to you is, why do you feel like the theory is scientific and
I don't.
Or isn't scientific? Why do you feel it's not scientific?
Well, before you start, I think Phil would like to respond to this one, but I want to just ask, have you seen the Nova Dover trial coverage? Like, did you watch the series?
I have seen that, yes.
Okay, where they actually looked at the scientific papers that were submitted for, on behalf of the side of the argument that was saying that intelligent design should be considered a scientifically valid position, correct?
Okay, yeah.
So they looked at that in the court to try to determine whether or not this could be taught in a science classroom as scientifically valid. And they did look at the research that was submitted by things like irreducible complexity, for example. They looked at that, and they had actually, and I apologize, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but the scientist who pioneered that idea, I don't know that he invented it. I don't know if he did or not, but he wrote about it.
Michael Behe.
Yeah, and so he got up and testified as well, and he is certainly credentialed, and still it was rejected. And
Okay.
you did watch this, you're saying?
Well, Joey, I've got a couple questions for you, if I may.
Okay.
Go for it.
Do you know who the designer is?
No.
Okay. How do you falsify your theory?
By comparing things that are not designed with things that we know are designed and making predictions.
Well, wait a moment.
If,
wait a minute. Are you saying, though, that the universe is designed?
No.
Okay, then how are you defining
let me be
intelligent
more
design?
specific.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so intelligent design, as I understand from, let's go with one book that I recently just finished, which is Stephen Meyer's Signature in the Cell. He defines ID as the theory that some features of life are best explained by intelligent causation.
Okay. So who's the agent? What is the agent? How would you? Okay, fair enough. I don't know. That's a really good answer. But the question is, how would you falsify that? Because at this point, it's just a claim.
So I would think that a way to falsify it would be studying studying objects that we know are not designed.
What would that be?
And then when we go, I'm sorry?
What would that be? Because if life is designed in some way,
like a rock.
Okay.
Would we know that a rock is not designed?
I mean, we would have to if we were to give forensics or archaeology any credit.
But don't we give biology credit, and they say life is not designed?
Well, I guess but are they saying it's not designed? I mean,
well, unless you're calling evolution, could evolution be a designer, in your opinion?
It could be, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I can work with that.
However, I think that ID, or the idea that an intelligent cause, perhaps, and this book that I just read has nothing to do with evolution, so to speak. It has to do with the chemistry involved in DNA.
I have a question. The guy who wrote the book, I'm assuming, has also written probably papers, right? Research?
Yeah.
Okay, and so he's produced research that is in the same vein as what he's putting forward in this book. Is that correct? And I'm asking. I don't know.
Yeah. His name is Stephen Meyer.
Right.
You can look him up online.
Sure. No, I'm.
Okay, so he's not a scientist. He's not a biologist. He is a philosophy of science PhD.
Does he have scientists or researchers that are also in support of his perspective?
He does have he does have scientific papers along with biology papers and things all throughout his book.
Do the authors of those papers agree with his interpretations of their work? Like, do their conclusions in the papers describe what he interprets them to be saying?
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that there are biologists.
I would say that there are perhaps. Go ahead. Hold on one second.
Sure, go ahead. No, you please go.
There might be maybe a study or two where Myers didn't summarize the study appropriately. I don't know off the top of my head. I haven't really looked at any of the criticisms, too many of the criticisms. I just know that most of the criticisms, especially on Amazon, don't even address the main topic of the book. But what I found is he appropriately summarizes things found in like information theory. He looks into biology. He
Right. What I'm trying to get to, though, is at the end of a research paper, there's an area for the conclusion where the researchers actually describe what they believe their findings represent and what they don't represent. So here's what we found, here's what we didn't found, and here's what we think it means. And what I'm trying to get to is Myers, when he cites these papers, is he going for information in the paper and then using it for his own conclusion? Or is he actually looking at the conclusions of the researchers? Are the researchers themselves saying, we believe that there's an intelligence involved based on our findings?
No. I don't think there's ever a...
And I'm just asking, again, I haven't looked at this, and I can't even assume that you would have gone and looked up every single piece of research that he cites in a book. I'm not going to hold you to something like that. Well, but I am going to say that it's important to look at how he's interpreting their research versus how they interpret their research as the researcher. And there's also a situation where you sometimes have somebody that gives an interpretation at the end of a piece of research, and then the peer group that is reading this paper comes out and says, we think that your conclusions as the researcher are problematic, right? So one example of that was a study where they found that people who went to church regularly were healthier. And so there was a lot of discussion in the paper about, why would church make people be more healthy? And somebody else said maybe people who are more healthy can go to church more, as opposed to somebody who's bedridden or chronically ill, and maybe they don't get out as much. So it could just be a correlation between someone going to church and being healthy enough to get there and to actually be there for a couple hours. I'm sorry that this is taking like a long segue, but I just want, the other issue is you have people, are you familiar with Deepak Chopra?
No.
Okay, well, he's a guy who's kind of famous for philosophizing about physics in a way that he puts it into layman's terms, but then he twists it very badly to where people who are hearing it get these very strange metaphysical concepts and ideas about odd things that really are not what the physicists would be supporting. So once the research gets filtered through Deepak Chopra, it comes out very different than what the studies themselves were claiming. And so I would think...
Can I just ask you a real quick question, though?
Sure, go ahead. I've been going on.
When it comes to the evidence in a paper, you do agree that conclusions or implications from that research can be different, right?
Obviously. People can see that them in different ways, but you can also make a case for why certain interpretations are not as good. So when the people were saying we need to find out why church makes people healthier, it was very important for somebody to say, did you evaluate whether or not the people who didn't go were already sick? Because that would make a big difference. Right? I mean, that would change it a lot. And if you didn't consider that as a confounding factor in your research, in the people that you studied, then you might have a big problem here because you're assuming that going to church somehow is fostering good health, where the reality might be that people who have good health go to the church more. You can see the criticism, and you can say, yes, that's a valid criticism of this finding and of the researcher's interpretation. If they didn't check for that, that would be a problem.
Yeah, so what I did see in the book is essentially Myers used an argument from a biology article, like either published in Nature or something like that. He said why the conclusion of the scientists was probably incorrect, and then proposed his own conclusion, which was, like, for instance, if you want to talk about homology in biology, and I think this is a different book that I've read, he says why homology in biology could be equally used as evidence for design or a common designer instead of common descent.
Okay, but here's the problem. In order for this to be, you're asking, what your question is why isn't this considered valid scientific theory? And he would have to convince the scientific community that what he is presenting is valid in their opinion as the people who basically are the arbiters, as the folks who do the research and who evaluate the research and who are the best qualified people that we have to evaluate the best evidence. They are the ones that kind of determine whether or not this constitutes a scientifically valid position that, for example, could be taught in a school.
And you'd have to be able to show that's falsifiable.
Right. And I mean, I understand what you were talking about earlier about we could do comparisons and things, but this has to be agreed to by the community of peers of the group who are considered expert in this area. That would be who he needs to convince. So in other words, Meyer convincing you or convincing me and Phil would not make this scientifically valid. He has to influence the community of peers in the scientific community.
Well, I feel, and I guess I'll conclude on this because I know the show's ending in a little bit, but I don't know if I would consider, especially reading all the criticism that I have seen about the ID movement, that the ID advocates really get a chance, especially in the sense that Stephen Myers was the person who tried to publish his findings saying that this is a really clear indicator of design, and the Smithsonian Institute rejected his paper, claiming some things like it wasn't peer-reviewed, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But so there was this whole thing that happened, and it was, in fact, published in the peer-reviewed journal, and then it had over 100 or 1,000 scientists writing in and saying ID is not scientific. Why did you post it or publish it in our paper?
Okay.
When if you can't publish a scientific hypothesis because it's already considered not scientific, how exactly would peer review? Okay,
but you're assuming that they're saying it's non-scientific because they've got a pre-assumption that it is. But if they looked at the paper and they say this is not science, this man is not doing science, then it could also be that the paper is criticized because it really isn't up to snuff for that community's standards. There's a man named Stephen LaBarge, and he did sleep and dream studies, and he's written about it. He's a little bit promotional, so I'll just give you a heads up and a warning. But he wrote a really good book about his experience and how he tried to publish again and again and again something that he believed was very valid and accurate. And he was rejected. He couldn't come and speak at symposiums. They wouldn't publish his paper. And every time they kept saying, how do you know this is what you think it is? You're not really showing us how you're going to demonstrate it. He believed in something called lucid dreaming, which is being awake when you're in a dream and being consciously aware that you're in the dream. And he had that experience, and he had, historic records of people that describe the same experience and people living today that they say that they have the capacity to do this. And yet they were saying, how do you know you're not dreaming, that you're aware that you're dreaming? And after struggling to get this published and struggling to do symposium talks, he finally got it and said, how do I know that I'm not just dreaming, I'm awake in a dream, as opposed to being awake in a dream? How would I know? And he actually devised experiments to go in and test for this, and he validated his hypothesis through those experiments, and now lucid dreaming is considered to be a valid, like a real thing in dreams that you can do. And they can show that people are conscious during that dream state, and you can test them, and they can give you feedback while they're dreaming. And so it's he did a good job, finally. And when he was able to demonstrate it, now he does his papers, now he does his talks, now he's validated, right? And so for a long time, now he was correct in his belief before, but he didn't really have it scientifically validated until later. And so the scientific community wasn't worried. They had no way to know if he was right or not. And they were basically telling him, you're not really giving us the information that allows us to determine if you're correct or not correct. And if we let you get up here and talk about this, we don't even know if this is an actual phenomenon. And how do you know? And he didn't. And so he made it his task to demonstrate that it was, or to at least test to see if he was right, because he began to doubt himself, which is the way that you should go at it. You should say, am I right? How would I know I'm right? And how would I demonstrate this to someone else? If this guy Myers, I mean, he may have a good point, and he may be correct in what he's doing, but it has to be up to snuff.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I would love to talk more about it. Yeah. I'd love to talk more about it if I can speak next week. I know that this is the end of the show.
I won't be hosting, yeah, you can try. You can give him a call and see how it goes.
Thanks, Joey.
Yeah, thank you for calling. Appreciate your call.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right, bye.